Nobody believed Atlas used to fit in the palm of one hand. The photograph is still taped to Maggie's refrigerator, a kitten barely bigger than a coffee mug, orange and fuzzy, curled into her palm with his eyes still half closed. People see the 22-pound cat sprawled across her couch today and insist the photo must be fake or borrowed or someone else's cat entirely. It isn't. That's Atlas at 6 weeks old, and that's Atlas now. Maggie had always been the tallest person in every room. Tallest in her class photos, tallest at family gatherings, the one people commented on before they'd even said hello. You must play basketball. Do you ever hit your head on door frames? She'd spent most of her 20s trying to take up less space, hunching slightly, choosing quiet corners, apologizing for a body she never asked for. So when a friend mentioned a Maine Coon breeder with one kitten left, the runt of the litter, something in Maggie hesitated. Maine Coons get huge, the friend warned, like dog-sized huge, 20 pounds, sometimes more. Are you sure? Maggie looked at the photo of the runt anyway, small and unremarkable among his bigger litter mates, and something about him being the smallest one felt familiar. I'll take him, she said. She named him Atlas, half as a joke about what he might become, half as a hope he'd grow into something steady. The first few weeks, Atlas was smaller than her shoe. He slept in the collar of her sweater, he batted at drawstrings with paws the size of grapes, and Maggie found herself narrating his tiny life out loud, like people do with something they're afraid to love too quickly. By week 5, he'd discovered the drawstring on her robe and treated it like his life's calling, chasing it in wild circles across the kitchen floor. By week 8, he was scaling the dining chairs, front paws hooked over the seat, back legs scrambling for purchase, refusing to be told he was too small for the climb. Maggie filmed all of it on her phone, half convinced she'd want proof one day of just how small this particular chaos had once been. Then, almost without her noticing, he started to grow. Not gradually, it seemed, but in sudden, overnight leaps. One week his ears sprouted little lynx-like tufts. The next, his paws had gone comically large for the rest of him, like a puppy who hadn't grown into himself yet. His tail alone seemed to have plans of its own, growing into a thick, plume-like brush that swept entire coffee cups off the side table before he'd even noticed it was there. By 4 months, strangers at the vet's office were already asking if he was part bobcat. He's not going to stop anytime soon, the vet told her, not unkindly. Maine Coons take 4 years to fully mature. You've got a big journey ahead. Maggie laughed, but something in her chest tightened too. She knew what it was like to keep growing past the point where people stopped being charmed by it. She wondered, quietly, if Atlas would learn the same things she had. That bigness made people nervous, that it made them step back, made them decide who you were before you'd said a single word. Still, growth didn't change everything. Whatever size he became, Atlas kept one habit from his smallest days. He insisted on sleeping directly against Maggie's neck, the same spot he'd claimed as a 6-week-old kitten, even as more and more of him spilled off the pillow with each passing month. If you've ever felt like your size, in any sense, made people misjudge you before they knew you, you already understand why Maggie couldn't stop watching how Atlas grew. Stick around, because what he became will surprise you, and if these stories mean something to you, go ahead and hit subscribe. By his first birthday, Atlas was unmistakably enormous. 14 pounds, then 18, then a full-grown 22, with a ruff of fur around his neck so thick it looked like a small lion's mane, and paws broad enough to cover Maggie's entire hand when he stretched them out. Neighbors reacted the way people had once reacted to Maggie. Is that safe to have around kids? Doesn't he knock things over? I'd be a little scared of something that big. But Atlas, despite his size, moved through the apartment like something built entirely out of caution. He stepped around Maggie's feet instead of through them. He batted at his toys with a gentleness that seemed almost deliberate, paws curling inward so his claws never touched skin. When Maggie's young niece visited, terrified at first by the sheer scale of him, Atlas lowered himself slowly to the floor and stayed there, patient and still, until she worked up the courage to touch his enormous paw with one small finger. The mail carrier stopped leaving packages at the door for almost 2 weeks after one glimpse of him in the window, convinced Maggie was harboring a small mountain lion, until Maggie finally brought Atlas out onto the porch just to prove he'd rather flop over and expose his belly than intimidate anyone. He never once used to size the way people assumed a cat that big would. He used it to be careful. Maggie started noticing the pattern in herself, too. She stopped hunching in doorways, she stopped apologizing for needing more room on the sidewalk. If Atlas could be that big and that gentle at the same time, she reasoned, maybe she didn't have to keep shrinking to make other people comfortable either. The real test came almost 2 years in. On an ordinary Tuesday evening, Maggie had come home from a long shift, dropped onto the couch, and started to feel her chest tighten in a way that had happened before. A panic attack building slowly beneath her ribs, her breath going shallow and fast. She reached for her phone, then set it back down, unsure what she even needed. The apartment felt too quiet, the walls too close, the kind of spiral that used to take 20 minutes or more to climb out of alone. Atlas noticed before she'd said a word. He climbed onto her lap, all 22 pounds of him, and simply laid down across her chest, heavy and warm, deliberate in a way that felt almost like pressure therapy. He didn't paw at her or meow, he just stayed, a solid, breathing weight anchoring her back into her body. "I know," Maggie whispered, her hand pressed into his thick fur. "I know, buddy." Her breathing slowed to the rhythm of his own steady purring. 10 minutes later, the panic had passed and Atlas was still there, unmoving, as though he understood exactly how long she needed him to stay. That was the night Maggie stopped thinking of his size as something to manage. She started thinking of it as something he'd chosen to carry gently, on purpose, every single day since he'd been small enough to fit in her palm. People still stop her on walks sometimes, wide-eyed at the sheer scale of him, and ask if he's really as sweet as he looks. "He's the gentlest thing I've ever met," she tells them. "Being big was never the problem. People just decided it would be before they bothered to find out." She tells people thinking about adopting a Maine Coon of their own not to be scared off by the warnings about size. The kittens grow, she says, but so does the loyalty, the gentleness, the quiet way they learn to carry themselves around the people they love. Size was never the warning label people made it out to be. Atlas is 4 now, fully grown, 24 pounds of fur and quiet patience, still sleeping most nights curled against Maggie's side like he's trying to take up as little room as possible even now. She still keeps that photo on the fridge, the one where he fits inside her palm, not because she misses how small he was, but because it reminds her size was never really the story. Gentleness was. It just took a giant cat to teach her that. Sometimes she says it out loud to no one, just to remind herself it's still true. Do you think big animals get judged unfairly for their size, or is that caution just common sense? Tell me what you think in the comments.